fellowship, Bible study and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And if it does stuff like that, I guess, there's too much troubleshooting these desires, man, what's still unthinkable. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Because that's her only source.
Good evening. Really don't know of any announcements, any more than we talked about this morning. I did forget Mary, this morning while I was up front and I didn't know about Mary other than after Jim and Dolores got here, but she's pretty low right now, so we certainly, I know she's been in our prayers. Of course, there were a lot, David put a text out and kind of was keeping us up to date on kind of what was going on with Mary while she was in the hospital. We thought she had a heart attack, but as it turned out, it wasn't. So they kept her there, I think, a day, piece of the day just to observe her. But evidently she's got some issues right now. I don't know. She don't know if we love her or not, so we need to make sure that we get with Mary. And we went by there after services this morning, but I wanted to be there with just us, and Jim and Dolores was over there, so I had intentions of coming back. We didn't make it, but anyway, Mary needs some support right now, so trying to call her is hit and a miss, and mostly a miss. I think her phone stayed off the hook a large portion of the time or something. I know the last couple of weeks, it's almost 9 out of 10 times you get a busy signal, and then you'll dial it and it'll ring. So you just never know what that's going to be. But, reach out to Mary. She would appreciate that greatly. You want to know of anything else that we need? Leslie's not here again this evening. I didn't talk to him this afternoon. You talked to him. Try to reach out to him. I did see Francis this morning. That was good. Let's sing hymn number 761. 761. Sweetheart, the promises, kind is the word, dearer far than any message man ever heard. Pure was the mind of Christ, sinless I see. He the great example is and pattern for me. Where he leads I'll follow all the way. Where he leads I'll follow Jesus every day. Sweet is the tender love Jesus my soul is secure. Where He leads, I'll follow, follow all the way. Where He leads, I'll follow, follow Jesus every day. And number 40. Number 40. Be with me, Lord, I cannot live without Thee. I dare not try to take one step alone. I cannot bear the loads of life unaided. I need Thy strength to lean myself upon. Be with me, Lord, and then if dangers threaten, if storms of trial burst upon my head, if flashing seas leap everywhere about me, they cannot harm or make my heart afraid. Be with me, Lord, no other gift or blessing Thou couldst bestow could with this one compare. A constant sense of Thy abiding presence, where'er I am, to feel that Thou art near. Be with me, Lord,
When loneliness overtakes me,
when I must weep
amid the fires of pain,
and when shall come the hour of my departure for worlds unknown. O Lord, be with me then. Turn to hymn number 687. 687. Church will be led in our opening prayer. If you will, let's be standing for the prayer and remain standing for the song, please.
Bow with please. Dear Heavenly Father, as we come to you at this time, Lord, pray that you will be with us as we go throughout this worship service. And I'd like to thank you for letting us come here today, Lord, and having this opportunity to come here into this building and gather together as brothers and sisters in Christ, Lord, and praise you and worship you, Lord. I pray that this will be pleasing to you and be with us as we go throughout this worship service, Lord. Help us return home safely into the next point of time. Forgive us when we fail you, Father, in Christ's name. Amen.
687. Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take Him at His word, just to rest upon His promise, just to know, thus saith the Lord. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust Him, how I prove Him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust Him more. Oh, how sweet to trust in Jesus, just to trust His cleansing blood, just in simple faith to climb.
Oh, for grace to trust Him more.
Please sing, please. Hymn after the lesson will be hymn number 347. 347.
Good evening, everybody. So, if you heard either or both, and there's a couple of guys in here that heard both of my lessons last week at camp, I'm sorry, but you're going to be hearing duplicates over the next 2 weeks. I really enjoyed, it wasn't last week, pardon me, it was really more like 2 weeks ago. I really enjoyed that camp that we were involved in. There were plenty of lessons by some great men that were really inspirational, were really needed. And the focus was rise. And the man that we were looking at was Joseph. We looked at the man Joseph and saw what he had to rise above. Those were the main lessons that we looked at, and I was given rise above temptation. Next week I'll go over a study of glory, giving God the glory, and how Joseph did that. But tonight is rise above temptation. Let's think about temptation and what it really is. What if we put temptation in a very simple concept? What is it? Very simply put, I am justifying sin in my heart. That's what I'm doing. And Satan is using that. Maybe it's not just me. Obviously, Satan helps with that. But, of course, we know that it's our own fleshly lusts and desires that cause us to want to sin. But ultimately, when we are tempted, especially for the Christian that's trying to do good, we are justifying it in some way or another, and we'll talk about it. The idea of justifying is trying to make it right. At a level, especially those of us here Sunday night who are trying to be good Christians, who are doing the best we can, when we come across a temptation, and it's not just that we've been living this life of sin, but we're trying to be a good person and we come across a temptation, maybe we're giving ourselves reasons as to why it might not be so bad to continue on with the sin. Now, before we continue on with this lesson, I want to state something, and the guys might remember this. I don't particularly like preaching sermons about sin. I don't. It's not fun. But I do like preaching sermons about temptation. Why is that? It hasn't happened yet. But the sin has not happened yet. Jesus Christ himself was tempted. Satan tried to give him reasons to justify sinning. But we see that as a glorious passage and not a sad, depressing passage. Why? Because Satan gave him these reasons why he should sin. And Jesus gave him the reasons why he's not going to. So, why do I love preaching about temptation? Because it can be a great triumph. Because it hasn't happened yet. So, we are going to continue to be tempted. Satan is going to give us justifications. We might even give ourselves some justifications as to why, okay, I know I shouldn't be doing this, but etc. But, etc. When we are being tempted, we're trying to give ourselves, or Satan is trying to give us a justification to continue on with that sin. These were some of the ideas that I brought up in camp. Some of these justifications might be, no one will see it. That might be the simple justification. It might not necessarily be that I'm saying, well, it's right, but I might say, it's not so bad because no one will see it. I want to. That might be a simple justification. I want to do this. Another one is, why is this even wrong? I don't know if it is all that wrong. You know, you start giving ideas about maybe, I am gossiping because, but it's not gossip, it's I'm just kind of giving information to other people, well, it might not even be wrong. We justify it. It'll just be once. It's just one time. These are the justifications, and there are plenty more. I could have written up 20 to 30 and still had dozens upon dozens of other justifications as to why we might sin. But ultimately, that's the best way of describing what temptation is. Maybe not the best way, but that's a way that we can look at temptation, is Satan is trying to justify it, make it right in some way in our mind, and we might retaliate and decide, yeah, you know what? I think that is right. And Satan does his best work when we justify it in our mind, we sin, and after we've sinned, we continue with that justification. That's the key. That's when he's really won. That's when an individual is starting to live this life, is when I did want to. Yeah, I don't even know if it was wrong that I did that. No one saw it, so I'm good. Yeah, it was probably just once, but who knows? When we hold on to those justifications, that's when Satan has really won. So the key to it is simply, when I'm being tempted, look at it as, okay, Satan's just trying to give me a justification in my mind, but I know what's wrong. We're going to be looking at the man Joseph as he was going through a great temptation, and as we'll be able to see, this temptation at one level, at one point, was incredibly tough on this man. And he could have given these different justifications, and that's what we're going to kind of look at. He could have taken these justifications, but he never did. And that's what makes him the great example that he is. So we're going to say, rise above temptation when, and we'll look at three different things. When what? Well, first, rise above temptation when you have power or popularity. That's what we looked at in camp, and it's definitely prevalent to not just teenagers, but to adults as well. Because especially that power aspect, that's going to come with adulthood. And even though he was still young, Joseph was becoming an adult at this time that he was receiving power. Let's look at the text below. Genesis chapter 39, verses 6 through 9. We're not going to have any text on the screen tonight, unfortunately, but Genesis chapter 39, verses 6 through 9. Let's discuss that. And remember, this is after he's been put away from his brothers. His brothers have thrown him away into Egypt. And now this happens. 6 through 9. So he left everything he owned in Joseph's charge. Wait a minute. Who? Potiphar. Potiphar had left everything he owned in Joseph's charge. The man that bought Joseph as a slave, because his brothers sold him into slavery, he realizes that the Lord is with him, and he realizes that he's doing good deeds. So he decides to give everything that he owns in Joseph's charge. So he left everything he owned in Joseph's charge. And with him he did not concern himself with anything except the food which he ate. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. It came about after these events that his master's wife looked with desire at Joseph and said to him, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Behold, with me here, my master does not concern himself with anything in the house, and he has put all that he owns in my charge. There is no one greater in this house than I, and he has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife." And we're going to stop there. We're going to look at the last phrase in just a second, because we need to highlight that phrase. But let's talk about this for a moment. If we remember this story, we're going to remember that here shortly, it's going to say that while Joseph and Potiphar were alone in a house. What then does that insinuate about every other time that she tried to tempt him with this? Probably means that they weren't alone. Probably means that there was a good chance they got caught. Why does she not care? Because she's a woman of power. If you think about this pagan land that they were in, this probably wasn't the first time that she did this with a young, handsome dude. Probably isn't. That was expected, and sadly, among powerful people, a sin like this is it's just kind of anticipated. Maybe not saying that you have to do it to be a part of this group, but that's normal. It really is. Look at people, just about anyone of power, and either they come across this great temptation and overcome it, or a scandal comes in about a powerful individual. And it may not be just about this sin. It could be numerous types of sin. The thing is, with power and popularity, like this guy, he's a famous dude. I'm not a famous dude. He is a good-looking dude. Probably popular among the ladies. There's this kind of expectation that if I want to continue being popular, if I want to continue with this stance, maybe I got to give into this sin. Or just think about any form of power that you might have. Sometimes, when given power, if we look at people of power, we look at people that have these big businesses, it's often a shock to see someone that has great power and be an amazing, down-to-earth person, right? That comes as a shock to us. If we are given that opportunity, and it might not be the owning a big business, it might just be power over someone that you employ. But if you're given an opportunity of power, a lot of times certain sinful behaviors are expected. Maybe not expected, but you know what? If I'm someone of power and I'm not just a terrible jerk of a guy, I'm considered to be a pretty good person. Now, the standard that we hold for a business owner is not the standard that we hold for a regular guy going to work. Right? I mean, it's not. Because you just kind of expect with power comes not great responsibility, unfortunately. With power, usually comes a lot of temptations. So that person's going to fall to temptations. If we are thrown in a situation like this, the best answer that we can give comes at the last sentence of verse 9. How then could I do this great evil and sin against God? He understood it. He could have said, everything leading up to this, let's reread that, verses 8 and 9. But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Behold, with here, my master," he's talking about his master, "does not concern himself with anything in the house, and he has put all that he owns in my charge." Who's he talking about? His master. There is no one greater in this house than I. Why? Because his master gave that to him. And he has withheld nothing from me except you. Why? Because you're his wife. He could have said, why should I do this great sin against Potiphar? He could have said, why do I do this great sin against you? He could have said, why do I do this great sin against myself? He didn't choose those words. He hasn't even brought God into the picture yet. He's just been talking about what his master has given him. And then in the end he said, so then why would I do this great sin against God? He gets it. Even if the situation is normal, I'm sinning against God. And I can't do that. So if we are given that justification of, I've got power, I'm going to use that. I've got popularity, I'm going to use that. People like me, so I'm going to continue sinning and living the way that they do. Say, but this is sinning against God. Pure and simple. Don't even, obviously we want to worry about the people that we sin against. But you don't even have to worry about the people and understand that I am sinning against God Almighty. And I can't allow that justification to take place. Continuing on, though, he says, this is number 2, rise above temptation when you have an opportunity. Now this one is big. This one really dives into Joseph's soul right here. Before we talk about this, why, for my football fans out there, and you don't have to answer this out loud, I'll give the answer, but why would a quarterback take a sack? Now, what that means is, if you don't know football terminology, that quarterback snaps the ball and he allows the other team to just tackle him without doing anything. There is pretty much no point in a football game that a quarterback wants to take that, except one. If he has no better opportunity. If there are certain points that he has to stand, that if he doesn't stand past it and he tries to throw it out of the field, well, they're going to get a flag and they're going to go back further. There are certain points that he might try to throw it to one of his teammates, but he knows more than likely that he is going to give up an interception. So there are certain points that a quarterback says, I am just going to get tackled. But that's very rare. Only given the opportunity. There are certain opportunities, and we're going to look at this, that maybe Potiphar's wife was thinking, I don't know if Joseph has had the proper opportunity yet to let himself go and just take the sack. Maybe I need to give him a better opportunity. Verses 10 through 12. And she spoke to Joseph day after day. He did not listen to her to lie beside her or be with her. Now it happened one day that he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the household was there inside. She caught him by his garment, saying, Lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and went outside. Joseph was given an opportunity. And think about this moment. Really think about it. Why did he leave his cloak? Why didn't he just turn around and grab it? All other times that this lady had tried to insist that he continue on with this sin, Joseph used that opportunity to say, why would we sin against God? He used that opportunity to maybe help her understand why we shouldn't sin. You shouldn't even sin. It's not just me. You shouldn't sin because this is a sin against God. But in this moment, he treated it like he was in a house fire and he didn't turn around and grab his cloak. Why? Because probably that justification that Satan was throwing in his head was sounding pretty good. You only run and leave your stuff behind when yourself or someone else is in danger. He knew he was in danger. Probably, that justification probably was sounding all right to him in this moment. But he needed to remind. He was given the opportunity. That justification of no one's around, no one's going to see it, it might just be one time, probably ringing in his ear. But he chose to run. Sometimes what we need to do is physically get out of there. We use this so often, the idea so often is make sure we run away from sin. We kind of use this in a metaphorical sense. No, Joseph is an actual man. He was an actual man who did the actual thing. Sometimes we are among people who are doing things that are against God's will. This is not just a teenager sermon. Those of us who are adults are around people or are by ourselves or whatever it might be, and we are given the temptation to go against God's will. Maybe take the opportunity, if it's not too great a temptation, to tell the people around you why that's a sin, and I'm not going to do that. But if that temptation, if that justification starts ringing in your ear, just walk away. And if you actually need to, do like Joseph and run. If we actually have to, that is something that this world doesn't usually practice. We usually try to talk, even if we know, okay, I'm not going to do this, but it's tempting. Maybe I'll try to talk to them. Maybe I'll take this opportunity to be an influence, but it's really tempting me, and then I just continue on with whatever that sin may be. Sometimes I just need to walk away. Sometimes maybe I need to run if that opportunity arises. Rise above temptation when you have an opportunity. Third and finally, rise above temptation when you are brought low. Verses 13 through 23 reads this. When she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and he fled outside, she called to the men of her household and said to them, "See, he has brought in a Hebrew to us to make sport of us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I screamed. When he heard that I raised my voice and screamed, he left his garment beside me and fled and went outside. So she left his garment beside her until his master came home." Verse 17. Then she spoke to him with these words, "The Hebrew slave whom you brought to us came in to me to make sport of me. And as I raised my voice and screamed, he left his garment beside me and fled outside." Now when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spoke to him, saying, "This is what your slave did to me," his anger burned. So Joseph's master took him and put him into jail, the place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in jail. Let's hold off there for a second. Ending at verse 20. This was an incredibly low point in his life. He had built up this life with his family. Now, he probably knew that his brothers didn't like him too much. But up until maybe 17 years old, I don't know, give or take, he built up this life with his family. And his brothers destroyed that. So then, even though that was a terrible time, he continued to build it up again. He, as a slave now, he rebuilds. But then Potiphar's wife broke it down again. He went from a hated brother, which isn't great, but is good, to a slave, which is pretty bad, to now being a prisoner. After building himself back up and then becoming a prisoner. When do we usually justify sin the easiest? Well, when we're brought low. When we have a bad day, when we have a bad month, when we have a bad year. I'm sorry that I screamed at you. It's just been a rough week. That's not. And we just throw it aside. Or, you know what? They've been really mean, but they've had a bad month. Throw it aside. Even for us watching someone, it's so easy to just justify it because, like, well, they've been going through a lot. It would be pretty easy to justify if Joseph wanted to just kind of sit back and be pouty and maybe be angry at God. It would be a little bit easier. But what do we see? Verses 21 through 23. But the Lord was with Joseph, and extended kindness to him, and gave favor in the sight of the chief jailer. The chief jailer committed to Joseph's charge all the prisoners who were in the jail, so that whatever was done there, he was responsible for it. The chief jailer did not supervise anything under Joseph's charge because, get this again, the Lord was with him. And whatever he did, the Lord made to prosper. The Lord isn't with people. The Lord isn't with people that are cursing his name. The Lord's with people who aren't. Joseph could have used this moment as justification to be a little bit less of a man than he had been. But it sure doesn't look like he did that. He went in prison and was put in charge to the point that the jailer didn't even find it necessary to put anyone in charge of him. He's a prisoner, but he says, you know what, I don't even have to worry about you. You just watch everyone else. Because of the kind of man that he continued to be. A lot of times, even when we're going through a bad time, we justify letting go of God a little bit. We justify that sin. But Joseph did not allow that to happen. Even when he had a place of power, he said, I'm not going to sin against God. Even when he had an opportunity, he ran. And even when he was brought to the lowest point of his life, I can honestly guarantee that was the lowest point of his life, he still honored God. Let us not allow any justification towards sin to live on in our life. Let us not allow that. Joseph didn't. He showed the kind of person that we can be even when we come through great temptation. All three of these temptations are very strong. Something that a lot of people would fall through. And he didn't. And he was just a man. Practically a boy. We can all do the same. Let us be like Joseph, and let us lean on God when we are tempted. Say, I'm not going to sin against God. When we are tempted, let us run away. When we are tempted, let us honor Him. Let us honor the Lord. And you may need help or prayers from this congregation to get through a temptation that you're going through. If so, please come forward. Please come talk to us. We want to help you. We want to pray for you. We want to continue checking in on you. Or maybe it's not a temptation, but there's something that you're just going through and you need our help. Come forward. And if you've not been added to the Lord's church, through the waters of baptism for the forgiveness of your sins, and you wish to do so right now, I encourage you to come forward. Whatever your need may be, please come forward as together we stand and sing.
Jesus is calling, calling, calling. Jesus is calling today. Why should I linger, linger, linger? I will arise and away. They are so happy, 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 who to their Savior obey. Why should I linger, linger, linger? I will arise and away. Savior obey. Why should I linger, linger, linger? I will arise and away. Jesus is waiting, waiting, waiting. Open now standeth the door. Soon the night falleth, falleth, falleth. Close are the gates evermore. They are so happy, 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 who to their Savior obey. Why should I linger, linger, linger? I will arise and away. Start hymn number 234. 234. The table is prepared. If there's anyone here that did not have an opportunity this morning, if you'll raise your hand, you'll be served at this time. I don't think we have anyone. Would like to remind everybody about our Wednesday evening Bible study here at the building at 7 p.m. Does anyone know of any other announcements that might need to be made? Let's sing hymn number 234, and then we'll be dismissed. I'm pressing on the upward way, new heights I'm gaining every day, still praying as I onward bound. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand by faith on heaven's stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. My heart has no desire to stay where doubts arise and fears dismay. Though some may dwell where these abound, my prayer, my aim is higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand by faith on heaven's stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. I want to scale the utmost high and catch a gleam of glory bright. But still I'll pray till heaven I found. Lord, lead me on to higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand by faith on heaven's stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground.
You got me? Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you today. Thank you for letting us all come together this afternoon as a family. And would you look over us as we go back to our houses, that you be with us and guide us as we come worship you this next point in time. And would you let us take Adam's message and use it in our daily lives and guide us through the week. And would you look over those who are sick and suffering? Would you be with them and guide them? And would you be with Mary? And would you look over us as we go through this new week that you've blessed us with? And would you look over those who are still fighting this virus? And would you forgive us for our sins? In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.